April 14th, 1944, 0217 hours, outside Monte Cassino, Italy. The night is supposed to be quiet. Not silent, war never allows that, but quiet enough that you can hear boots crunching on gravel. Quiet enough that a whispered command carries 10 meters farther than it should. A German grenadier crouches behind a stone wall, his rifle pressed against the cold rock, breath fogging the air. Then the noise starts again. Not artillery, not engines. Voices. Disembodied, constant, everywhere. They crackle through the darkness in short, clipped bursts. English words, sharp and fast, layered on top of each other. The German soldier can't see the Americans yet, but he can hear them, talking, coordinating, calling something in. He turns to the Feldwebel beside him, confusion cutting through the fatigue. "How are they doing that?" he whispers. The sergeant doesn't answer. He's staring into the dark too, because it doesn't make sense. Every American unit seems to be talking at once. You can almost feel the tension in that moment, the waiting, the uncertainty, the sense that something is happening just beyond the edge of vision. For the German soldiers dug into the Italian hills, this wasn't just another Allied attack. It felt different, because no matter where the Americans moved, they were connected. The artillery strike comes 3 minutes later, perfectly timed. Not early, not late. As if someone, somewhere, had watched the German positions shift and spoken directly to the guns. The wall explodes. And for the first time, many of the men surviving that barrage realize the truth. They are not fighting individual American units. They are fighting a network. Earlier that same night, several kilometers away, an American forward observer kneels in the dirt, radio handset pressed tight against his helmet. "Fire mission, grid reference Baker 7-2, he says calmly. No shouting, no runner, no delay, just radio. Behind him, a platoon waits, rifles down, eyes forward. They trust the voice in that handset more than they trust the darkness ahead, because they know what happens next. The observer listens, adjusts. Add 50, left 20. Seconds later, steel falls from the sky. This is what the Germans can't understand. Not at first, not yet. For most of the war, German battlefield communication has followed a familiar rhythm. Orders flow down from headquarters through field telephones. When wires are cut, and they are always cut, runners carry messages by hand. Men sprint through shell fire, through mud, through smoke, hoping they reach the next command post before the situation changes again. It's slow, but it's how war has always worked. And then the Americans arrive with radios everywhere. At first, German officers dismiss it. Radios are nothing new. The Wehrmacht has them too. Tanks carry them. Headquarters use them. Luftwaffe pilots rely on them constantly. But this is something else. American infantry platoons have radios. Company commanders have radios. Forward observers have radios. Tank crews, artillery units, engineers, everyone seems to have a voice that reaches farther than the human shout. It's unsettling. A captured German lieutenant would later describe the sensation like this. It was as if every American soldier had an invisible thread connecting him to all the others. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. During a skirmish near Anzio, German troops managed to ambush an American patrol. The first shots drop 2 men instantly. The Germans prepare to press the advantage. Then, less than a minute later, American mortars begin falling with terrifying accuracy. The Germans retreat, confused, shaken. How did they respond so fast? One soldier asks. No one has an answer. What the Germans don't see is the moment between the ambush and the counterstrike. The American squad leader diving for cover, the radio operator already pulling his handset, the call going out, not to a runner, not to a distant headquarters, but directly to supporting fire.
It's not bravery, it's system. By late 1944, German intelligence officers begin to take notice. After-action reports mention it again and again. The enemy reacts immediately. Artillery response within minutes. Air support called with alarming speed. At first, they assume exaggeration. Then they start counting radios. Captured American equipment reveals the scale of it. SCR-300 backpack radios, SCR-636 handy-talkies, vehicle-mounted sets, spare batteries, replacement antennas, manuals printed in the thousands. The sheer abundance is staggering. One German signals officer reportedly shakes his head while examining a captured set. "We would need an entire factory," he mutters, "just to give this many radios to one division. And the Americans have hundreds of divisions." But the real shock isn't the equipment, it's how it's used. American doctrine doesn't treat communication as a luxury, it treats it as a weapon. In Normandy, German commanders notice something else. American units don't freeze when plans fall apart. They adapt. When a road is blocked, someone radios. When a bridge is destroyed, engineers are already moving. When a German counterattack forms, it's reported, tracked, answered. The battlefield seems alive, responsive, as if the Americans are seeing the fight from above. And slowly, uncomfortably, a realization begins to spread through the ranks of the Wehrmacht. They aren't being outshot, they aren't even being outmaneuvered, they are being outcommunicated. One German major captured near Aachen puts it bluntly during interrogation. "You fight like one organism. We fight like separated limbs." That sentence will haunt German staff officers for the rest of the war. Because once communication becomes seamless, everything else changes. Speed, coordination, morale, survival. And yet, this advantage comes with a hidden cost. Radios emit signals. Signals can be intercepted. And somewhere deep inside German intelligence, a dangerous thought begins to form. If we can't match American communication, maybe we can disrupt it. But by the time they truly understand what they're up against, it may be already too late.
The German signals van is hidden beneath a stand of shattered trees, its canvas sides streaked with mud and soot. Inside, the air smells of oil, sweat, and hot electronics. A young Unteroffizier sits hunched over a receiver, headphones pressed tight against his ears, fingers frozen above a notepad. He is listening, not for music, not for codes, for voices. It's June 12, 1944, 1 week after the Allied landings in Normandy. The front is fluid, chaotic, violent. Units clash and separate, reform and collide again. In this chaos, German commanders desperately want clarity, where the Americans are moving, where they are weak, where they will strike next. So the signals troops listen, and what they hear is overwhelming. American radio traffic fills the spectrum. It's constant, layered, alive. Platoon leaders calling in reports, tank commanders requesting directions, forward observers calmly adjusting artillery fire while shells scream overhead. There is no long silence, no hesitation, just voices, steady, confident, professional. The Unteroffizier scribbles furiously, trying to log call signs, fragments of phrases, anything useful. But it's like trying to map a river during a flood. Too many currents, too many sources. What unsettles him most is not the volume, it's the tone. American voices do not sound panicked, they sound routine. You can almost feel the shift in perspective here. For years, German soldiers had believed themselves the masters of modern warfare. Blitzkrieg had proven that speed, coordination, and initiative could shatter slower armies. But now, listening to those voices in the dark, something feels inverted. The Americans sound like they own the battlefield. German doctrine values Auftragtaktik, mission-based command. Officers are given objectives, not instructions. Flexibility is prized. But that flexibility depends on communication, and communication is fragile. Field telephone lines are buried, then cut by shell fire. Runners are sent, then killed or delayed. Orders arrive too late or not at all. American units, by contrast, seem to exist in a constant conversation. A German captain near Carentan watches this firsthand. His company prepares a counterattack at dawn. The plan is simple: strike hard, then withdraw before American artillery can respond. At first, it works. Then, within minutes, shells begin to land precisely along their approach routes. The captain survives, but barely. Later, he asks the question everyone is beginning to ask: how did they know? The answer lies in a small radio, no bigger than a loaf of bread, carried by a kneeling American sergeant. As the German attack began, the sergeant spoke into the handset, not to his commander, not to headquarters, to the entire system. This is the core difference the Germans are struggling to grasp. American radios are not isolated tools, they are nodes. Each transmission feeds a larger network, one that links infantry, armor, artillery, and air power into a single operational picture. And once that picture exists, reaction becomes instantaneous. German intelligence officers compile reports. They note how American artillery fires faster than expected, how close air support arrives with uncanny timing, how American units rarely seem surprised. The conclusion is unsettling. The Americans are not just better supplied, they are better informed. Inside German headquarters, attempts are made to respond. Jamming equipment is deployed. Signals units are ordered to intercept and disrupt. But American radio discipline proves frustratingly effective. Frequencies change, procedures evolve. And, most importantly, the sheer number of radios means redundancy. Cut one link and another fills the gap. You begin to see the emotional toll this takes on German soldiers. Imagine fighting an enemy who seems to anticipate your every move, who reacts before your attack has fully formed, who can concentrate firepower from multiple directions with a few spoken words. It feels less like fighting men and more like fighting an intelligence. Captured German soldiers speak of it openly now. They always knew, one says. Another adds, we could hide from their eyes, but not from their radios. It's not fear, it's resignation. Yet even now, the Germans believe there must be a weakness. Every system has one. Signals can be jammed, codes can be broken, technology can fail. And somewhere, in a quiet room far from the front, German analysts are working desperately to find the flaw in America's invisible weapon. Because if they don't, the battlefield will never belong to them again. The room is quiet, in a way the front never is. No artillery, no engines, no shouting. Just the faint hum of electrical equipment and the scratch of pencils on paper. It's July 1944, deep inside a German signals intelligence facility in occupied France. Maps cover the walls, Normandy hedgerows, river crossings, suspected American command posts. Thin wires run from radio receivers to recording devices. Every intercepted transmission is logged, categorized, analyzed. This is where the German High Command hopes to solve the problem. This is where they try to understand the weapon they cannot see. A senior signals officer, Oberstleutnant Karl-Heinz Mertens, stands over a table covered in transcripts. He has spent weeks reading fragments of American radio traffic, short phrases, call signs, grid references. What troubles him is not what the Americans say, it's how little they need to say. American transmissions are brief, efficient. A few words, a grid coordinate, a correction, and then silence. Seconds later, something happens on the battlefield. Artillery lands, tanks move, aircraft appear. The cause and effect are unmistakable. Mertens compares this to German practice. German radio traffic is longer, more formal, more cautious. Orders are repeated to ensure clarity. Confirmations are required. That takes time. American units don't wait, they act. This is the moment German analysts begin to understand something fundamental. American radios are not just tools of communication, they are tools of decision-making. On the battlefield, speed is everything.
Not just speed of movement, but speed of thought. The faster an army can observe, decide, and act, the more likely it is to survive. Without realizing it, the Germans are staring at the future of warfare. In American units, radios flatten command structures. A platoon leader doesn't need to wait for orders to climb back down the chain. If he sees an opportunity or a threat, he can speak directly into the system, and the system responds. You can almost picture it. A German counterattack forming in the bocage. An American forward observer glimpses movement through the hedgerows. He doesn't run. He doesn't write. He speaks, and steel answers. German officers begin calling it die unsichtbare Waffe, the invisible weapon. Not because it cannot be touched, but because its effects appear without warning. There is no buildup, no delay, just impact. Attempts are made to copy the system. Orders go out to distribute radios more widely among German infantry, but the reality is brutal. Germany lacks the industrial capacity. Copper is scarce. Factories are bombed. Skilled labor is gone. And even when radios are available, there are not enough trained operators. A radio without discipline is noise. American soldiers, by contrast, train endlessly on communication. Radio procedure is drilled until it becomes instinct. Short transmissions, clear language, no wasted words. Every second saved is a life saved. This discipline frustrates German interception efforts. They want chatter, they get precision. They want mistakes, they get professionalism. A breakthrough seems possible when German analysts notice patterns, certain call signs recurring, certain units operating together. But before they can exploit it, the Americans change procedures. Call signs rotate, frequencies shift, the network adapts. On the ground, German soldiers feel the difference even if they don't understand the mechanics. An attack that should succeed suddenly collapses under coordinated fire. A flanking maneuver is met by tanks already waiting. Every mistake feels anticipated. One German sergeant writes in his diary, "It is as if the Americans are watching us from above." He isn't wrong. They are. Through voices, through signals, through an invisible web stretched across the battlefield. By late summer 1944, this realization spreads upward, from soldiers to officers to generals. The Americans have turned communication into combat power, and Germany is losing the race. But still, hope remains, thin, desperate, but alive. If radios are the enemy's strength, then silence might become Germany's last refuge. And so, German units begin to change how they fight. Fewer transmissions, more caution, more isolation. It will not save them, but they don't know that yet, because the invisible weapon is about to evolve. And when it does, it will reach not just across the battlefield, but into the sky itself.
August 7th, 1944. 10:42 hours. Somewhere above northern France. The American fighter is already banking when the call comes through. Bandits reported. Grid Charlie 4. The pilot doesn't ask questions. He doesn't need to. His hand tightens on the throttle as the radio crackles again. Calm, precise, almost casual. Somewhere below, an observer has seen something. Somewhere else, a radar screen has confirmed it. The sky, it seems, is listening too. For German pilots, this is where the nightmare deepens. The air war has always been dangerous, but now it feels unfair. Luftwaffe fighters scramble only to find American aircraft already climbing toward them. Bombers change course mid-mission, avoiding flak that hasn't even opened fire yet. It feels like the enemy knows where they will be before they get there. The truth is simpler and far more devastating. American radios have left the ground. Air-ground coordination is not new. Every major power experiments with it, but the Americans take it further, much further. Forward air controllers move with infantry units, radios strapped to their backs. Radar operators track enemy aircraft and speak directly to pilots. Bomber formations adjust routes based on real-time updates from below. The battlefield is no longer two-dimensional. It is layered, connected, alive. A German flak officer near Saint-Lô watches this unfold in disbelief. He sees American aircraft divert moments before his guns open fire. He adjusts. They adjust faster. Later, examining captured equipment, he sees the same radios again. Different models, different frequencies, same principle. Connection. For the Luftwaffe, this is catastrophic. German pilots rely on ground control, but those systems are centralized and vulnerable. Bombing raids destroy command centers, radar stations are hit, telephone lines vanish under rubble. American pilots, by contrast, carry the battlefield with them. If one controller is lost, another answers. If one frequency is jammed, another opens. You can feel the shift in the air. German pilots grow cautious, then defensive, then desperate. They stop trusting their own intelligence. They begin reacting instead of planning. And in air combat, reaction is death. A German ace later describes the sensation. We were flying blind. The Americans were flying informed. That single difference changes everything. On the ground, German soldiers notice the same pattern. They hide vehicles under trees, camouflage artillery, move only at night. Still, air attacks find them. Not because the Americans can see everything, but because someone, somewhere, is always talking. This is the moment when communication stops being support. It becomes dominance. Inside German headquarters, the reports pile up. Air-ground coordination exceeds expectations. Enemy reaction time measured in minutes, sometimes seconds. Requests are made for more jamming equipment, more intercept units, more radios of their own. None arrive. The factories are gone. The copper is gone. The time is gone. And slowly, a terrifying truth settles in. Even if German units fight perfectly, they will always be late. Because the Americans are no longer fighting as divisions or corps or armies. They are fighting as a system. One that spans land and air. One that listens, reacts, and strikes faster than human instinct. By the fall of 1944, some German units attempt radio silence entirely. No transmissions, no signals, no voices. It keeps them hidden, but it also keeps them alone. No artillery support, no air cover, no coordination. Isolation becomes safety and also surrender. The invisible weapon has forced a choice. Speak and be found. Stay silent and be powerless. Either way, the battlefield no longer belongs to them. And yet, the Americans are not finished. Because the same radios that coordinate attacks are about to reshape something even deeper. Morale, trust, and the way soldiers experience war itself.
December 3rd, 1944, 06:10 hours, outside Aachen, Germany. The American platoon is cold, wet, and exhausted, but it is not afraid. Snow clings to helmets and rifle barrels, boots sink into frozen mud. Somewhere ahead, German positions wait in silence. The men crouch low, shoulders hunched, breath slow. And in the middle of it all, a radio crackles softly. Not with panic, with certainty. This is the part German soldiers struggle to describe after the war. Not the weapons, not the numbers, not even the air power. It's the confidence. An American squad leader presses his headset closer and speaks calmly, requesting smoke, same grid. There is no shouting, no urgency in his voice. He sounds like a man placing an order he knows will be filled. Moments later, white smoke blooms ahead of the platoon, rolling across the open ground like a curtain being drawn. The men move. They trust the voice in that radio more than they trust the terrain beneath their feet. German defenders watching through binoculars notice it immediately. The Americans advance without hesitation, not recklessly, but deliberately, as if they know something. This psychological edge is the final evolution of the invisible weapon. Radios don't just connect units, they connect confidence. A German corporal later explains it to an interrogator. They always seemed certain help would come. That certainty matters, because in combat, hesitation kills. German units, increasingly isolated, feel the opposite. Messages take longer, support is uncertain, orders conflict or never arrive. A platoon commander might wait hours for artillery that never comes. An American commander waits seconds. You can almost feel the difference in morale. One side advances expecting coordination, the other advances hoping for it. During the Battle of the Bulge, this contrast becomes painfully clear. German forces strike hard, fast, and deep. At first, it works. American units are surprised, scattered, cut off. But even then, the radios remain. A surrounded American battalion radios its situation. Within hours, air supply drops begin, artillery shifts, rescue plans form. The men dig in, not because they are ordered to, but because they know they are not alone. German soldiers intercept these transmissions. They hear American voices, steady, controlled, discussing relief while under fire. It feels unreal. They are surrounded and still connected. One German officer shakes his head while listening. He speaks, he says quietly, as if the war is already decided. And in a way, it is. Because war is no longer decided only by courage or firepower. It is decided by certainty, by knowing that when you speak, someone answers. By early 1945, this realization is complete. German units retreat not just because they are outnumbered, but because they are alone, cut off from information, cut off from support, cut off from hope. The Americans, by contrast, move like a single organism. A platoon advances because a company supports it. A company advances because artillery stands ready. Artillery fires because observers see and speak. Every action feeds the next. And at the center of it all, a simple radio. As the war draws towards its end, German prisoners begin to talk openly. They don't ask about tanks. They don't ask about bombers. They ask about radios. How many? How far they reach? How often they fail? The answers unsettle them, because the truth is brutal. The radios didn't just help America win battles, they changed what it meant to fight one. And in the ruins of Europe, as the guns finally fall silent, one lesson remains, clearer than any other. In modern war, the side that talks best, fights best.